came from the sheep wagon that was used on the LeVar Ranch for many years, north of Douglas. And when Paul Stratton was head of the department here, and Mick Bodkins was working with the sheep, they bought a sheep wagon from George LeVar, brought it down here, and they turned the sheep loose up at the airport. That was all range up there. So they sent a herder up there with them. I think they took all the purebreds up, everything was up there. They sent a herder up with them, and he lived in the sheep wagon. And in the summertime, and then they quit using it for some reason after 2 or 3 years. And they brought it down and had it out here at the stock farm. And the kids evidently were in it smoking cigarettes. And they set it afire, and it burned out there. And the stove, with the stove in it, they got out right away and got the stove out before it was damaged. And he and Paul and Neil Fry took it up and hid it in the back of the old horse barn up there under some tarps, because everybody in the country driving out there wanted to know if they could buy that stove out of the sheep wagon. They were just overrun with people wanting to buy that stove. And so they hid it. And then when they moved the material out to get ready for the prison, why, we sneaked out there one night, and they lowered it down out of the track, and we brought it up here. They gave it to me. And as I remember, that was quite a little job getting that up those stairs.
I would think so.
It was a little heavy. I had it in my garage for quite a while. It was all rusty, and I saved when I blacked it up and got a little better condition. But as I remember, we did have a little trouble moving it up the stairs there.
Ken, what do you do to black up a stove? Is it paint?
No, they have regular stove blackening. This was a liquid. This was a liquid. I know it just painted off. And that stove's in good shape, and that would be worth a lot of money to a lot of people, really. They're hard to come by anymore.
Yeah.
Over here, we'll start with some of the stuff we've got here. I've told several of you what this is. Remember what it is?
Hootenanny.
Hootenanny, that's right. And I've never heard it called anything else, except this one here. It's the fellow who was president, who was in charge of the Monmouth, retired several years ago, and he's done some sheep shearing as a young man. And he called this a crutch. He brought this in. You see, it's a little more elaborate than this one. But he called it a crutch. That's the first time I've ever heard him call anything but a hootenanny. And these were brought over with the shepherds that came over from England and Wales. Some Canadians came down. And they were brought over to sharpen their these shears with. The hand shears that these shears up here use, you know. And they came over to brought this thing with them. Present day, Earl Reed up north of Douglas is the only one that I know of who can use a hootenanny to sharpen shears with. He has the sheep shearing demonstrations there at the fair every year, at the state fair. And he sharpens these shears with a hootenanny.
What was his name? Wood?
Reed.
Reed. Okay.
Yeah, Earl Reed. This is Dick Hack's old hootenanny, and you can see he didn't spend much, hadn't got much invested in it. A couple of old broomsticks, the block, and a bent bolt there to.
Can you show us how it works?
Well, there's a picture you can show
Yeah.
your tour guide.
Here it is.
There.
Oh, okay.
This is one that Herb and I took down there. That's me on the. I don't know how to run the hootenanny, but I'm just showing them the way it was used.
Okay, you use the...
Put it over a grindstone, and this point in the end, you stick that in a board wall or a tree or whatever happens to be there, and then just run this back and forth over your grindstone, you see.
Did it hold the shears still or make them at an angle so you got your sharpening at it.
No, see, they put an angle blade on it like that.
Right, and that just show that, so that's just to hold it still.
Yeah, that's just to hold it still. In other words, if you were just holding on by hand, you would, regardless of how careful you were, you would get some dips and
So having that stuck in something, just
yeah,
as a...
and stuck. See, all you have to do is run it back and forth across like that.
I wonder, would they have to sharpen them several times during the day if you were to shear all day long?
They could, yeah, depending on how many sets of shears they had. They usually had just a shearing crew, like us up there, would have one or two fellows just in charge of sharpening shears. That's all we did. So they would, they did all of themselves. I think most of the shearers could sharpen them themselves. Although I don't know, maybe not. But anyway, that was the principle they used. And most crews, like I say, had somebody that particularly worked on it.
You'd plan ahead and sharpen several for you to use during the day, and then maybe that night.
Especially on the Laramie Plains and the area out on over in the Red Desert, where there's lots of sand. See those?
Oh, there'd be sand in the
Oh, yeah. And those little ewes like that, they would have lots of grease in their wool. In fact, even after I came out here in 46, the practice was then for these sheepmen to not shear their sheep, their regular bands, until along in May or June, middle of June. So they'd get grease up in their wool, and it was way more. And so that wool was real greasy, and well, like out in the Red Desert where it blows a lot, why, there'd be a lot of sand in that wool. So you're right, it'd only take maybe 2 or 3 head of sheep, and it would have to resharpen. But that's a hootenanny. This this one has HAF in it, and that's just a brand number. You put that in the ear. This is just a what you call it, pierces the ear.
Tag?
Hmm?
The tag? Your marker or identification, is that what?
Yeah, that's for identification there.
You'd have to have the brand as well as that in your ear?
No.
The ear would be enough.
This is optional. You can just put this into. A lot of people have used this to frustrate stealing sheep because it's awful easy to go out and steal sheep. The only mark on them is that paint brand to put on the fleece.
You can get that off easily.
All they have to do is cut that off or shear the sheep, and there's no end.
So everybody has like a little braille system then?
Yeah.
Sort of, huh?
That's just a tattoo system. That's what I was trying to think of, is a tattoo.
Oh.
And then just tattoo the inside of the ear and rub the purple paint in it, you know, and tattoo ink in it, and that leaves it pretty much of a permanent, yeah. When Alex Johnson was still alive, we worked for several years on trying to get a permanent identification, a bird brand on sheep. Their sheep, their skin is so thin that you can't hardly put a bird brand anywhere on a sheep. But we did try burning on the nose, different indications here on the nose, but you can only put about 4 or 5 different symbols, so you only have about 4 or 5 brands, even if it did work. And it didn't work very well, they wouldn't stay. We also tried tattooing lambs underneath in the flanks and underneath the belly where people couldn't see them if they were going to steal them, but if you ran onto them, you could turn them up and get the identification, tattoo identification on them. But it never worked very well because, surprisingly, the skin on those little lambs, if you get them at docking time when they're 2 or 3 weeks old, tattoo them. When you bring them in that fall, that tattoo is liable to be anywhere. It's liable to be all way back. They move that far, you know, obliterate and so forth. So we never got a very good system of identification with that. This is the old 3-in-1. Well, tell the story. But this is a 3-in-1. You see it has a cutting blade here. I use that to cut off the end of the ear. Lots of sheepmen mark their bands with cutting off the end of the ear. That's an easy thing to see coming down the chute. Also, on castration, they would cut the end of the testicle off so they could reach in and get a hold of the testicle with these serrated blades. You can pull the testicle and pull them out. And then it has somewhere there's an ear notcher on this.
Is it underneath there?
Oh, here. Been so long since I used one. But see, this is ear notcher. Cuts corner, 3-corner slice out of their ear. A lot of sheepmen branded by year, or ear notch by year. They'd have one notch here for 91, notch over here for 92, notch up here for 93, here for 94, maybe 2 notches for 95. And most of them, a 5-year-old ewe was ready to go to market, so then they'd start over again. And so some people marked them for, ear notched them for identification too. That's the reason a lot of sheep have gone into the market in the last 30 years in the markets over in South Dakota with their ears cut off when they go to market, because of identified notches, ear notches are in the ears, so they just cut the ear off before they send to the market.
Oh, the poor.
But prior to the invention of this, and I don't know when it was invented, I would say sometime, or when it was brought out, sometime in the late 20s, when I was teaching Boag in Illinois in 1937, I bought one for the Boag department, so they were in use before the mid-30s. But prior to that time, and I hope none of you folks will mind this, about the only way they could castrate lambs out in this area, where there were a lot of them, was with the teeth. And they actually did that. We thought they were growing up in the Middle West, that was, you know, that was just unheard of. But out here, where you had, you get a band of 2,000 ewes in, half of them would be wethers, so that'd be 1,000 wethers you'd have to get in and get out before it got hot in the middle of the day, because if it gets hot, why, those lambs bleed an awful lot. So you have to get them in the cool of the day, so you have to go through them pretty fast. Like, where they... Well, I don't see it. And here now of lambing. Oh, here. See, this is the way they stand up to castrate and to detail them and so forth.
So did they have to castrate them if it was the wool they were after, or was it for the meat?
Well, of course, these lambs went to market.
So they were for meat?
Yeah, so they had to be, or they took a $5 a head dock on them if they went in as a ram instead of a wether, you see, in the fall.
Because why?
Well, because actually they found out the sheepmen the last few years have been, this Powell Pool, for instance, has been sending ram lambs to market up until about the middle of June. And they've been getting away with it, and the market greets them all right. But up until just the last 10 years, why, there was almost twice as much, a wether was worth almost twice as much as a ram lamb.
What is wether mean?
Wether means that's a castrated ram lamb with the testicles taken out.
And they get bigger? Is that why they're better for market? Or?
They fatten a little better, supposedly. But since this craze for lean meat has come in the last 10 or 15 years, why the lamb buyers don't object to this leaner meat and less fat. What you get on a ram lamb, if you let him go until market weight, you get more lean meat, more muscle, than you would if he was a wether. He would just put on more fat as a wether. But as I say, if you have 1,000 lambs to get out before it gets hot, and these lambs, they usually tried to get them when they were about 2 months old, and everything up to 2 months old. So some of those lambs would only be a couple, 3 weeks old, see.